Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Russian Postage Stamp Collector. Back in the pre-internet days of my early 20s, I worked in a large office and there were a lot of guys of a similar age and our heads were full of laddish nonsense. We spent our lunches and breaks together, went out and got drunk together, played football together, etc. Our local city newspaper was read by everyone. It was available in the shops every day at lunchtime and it was effectively the one and only source of news for the city and the local sports teams, buy and sell, etc. Everyone read it and it had a prominent readers' letters page. One of our favorite pastimes was to see whether we could get ridiculous letters published from readers with silly names. Think of the names that Bart Simpson uses when he prank calls Moe's Bar. We had to handwrite the letters and post them to the newspaper. This was all fine and well and we all enjoyed the fun of duping the newspaper and having one of our ridiculous letters published. Then, things took a dark turn and we started to use each other's real names in the letters to embarrass each other. For example, I was walking down the street and slipped and fell on dog feces and my good suit was covered in dog feces. I wish dog owners would pick up after their pets. Not malicious, but mildly embarrassing for the named sender. I got into a bit of a to and fro with one of the guys. Each of us upping the ante with our published letters that used the other's name. It culminated with him getting a letter published in my name along the lines of, I have started to collect Russian postage stamps as a hobby. Does anyone have any that they could send me for my collection? It seemed innocuous enough, so I wasn't overly embarrassed or concerned at the time. It seemed like a poor effort, really. Then the stamps started to arrive. Thick envelopes full of used Russian postage stamps from people with Russian names. And there were lovely accompanying letters in the envelopes. I am not the sort of person who could ignore nice letters from nice people, so I responded with a thank you letter to each and every one of them. Of course, I never actually revealed that I had no interest in the stamps. I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make them feel duped. The envelopes arrived for a few weeks and it was just before Christmas, so I actually started using Christmas cards as thank you letters. I had a substantial collection by the time they stopped arriving. Of all the silly pranks that we pulled on each other, that was by far the most effective and the one we still laugh about when we meet up and recall those days. Next one is titled, Nice Snickers Bar? A number of years ago I was a paramedic in the UK. At the time there were not many of us qualified, in fact my PIN was in double digits showing how early I qualified. At the ambulance station I worked at we had a food thief, and he had a thing about Snickers bars. I used to like my Snickers bars from the refrigerator so the caramel was chewy, just a texture thing. The problem was if I left one there and got a job, I could guarantee it would be gone when I got back. I hatched a plan. As a paramedic, I carried syringes and hypodermic needles. I also had a bottle of 2 million Scoville hot pepper sauce in my locker. We had a good idea who the thief was but no actual proof, but here I was working the same shift as him. A job came in and he went out on it. I got a Snickers bar, drew up 5 milliliters of hot pepper sauce, fitted a 14G needle and pushed the whole 5 milliliters into the bar through the wrapper. I went through the wrapping into the end of the bar and then popped the bar into the fridge, syringe and needle into the sharps box and sat back. Not long after I got a call to a job and away I went. A while later I came back to base and was met by another crew member telling me the guy we suspected of stealing food was in the toilets being sick and could I have a look at him. When I went in he was crouched over the toilet, red face and sweating with streaming eyes. I asked what was going on and he said he thought he had food poisoning. Full of mock concern I ran up tests on him, temperature, BP, blood glucose and a 12-lead ECG. Of course all was fine so I quizzed him on his symptoms, burning sensation in his mouth, nausea, running eyes, sweating. I said I couldn't find anything wrong with him but could he have eaten anything irritant by any chance? He looked at me to see me holding the pepper sauce bottle. You could see the light come on as he realized what had happened. There was a burst of cheering from the other crews watching as they realized what had gone on. It was the last time any food went missing. Next one is titled, "Refuse to Clean? I'll air out your dirty laundry." I was in the Navy. I was in basic enlisted submarine school with shared barrack rooms. I had 2 roommates who, for a lack of a better term, sucked. They were dirty, they never cleaned, and they just smelled bad all the time. Oh, and also they never woke up on time for anything. Every week during room inspections we failed, terribly. I ended up getting so annoyed with them because we started to get into a lot of trouble. So I plotted the revenge to show the inspectors that it wasn't me making the mess and it was my 2 soil sack roommates. Every 4 or so days everyone stood duty. One weeknight I was on duty and I waited for the exact time that I was a roving watchstander in the barracks to pull off the trickery. I peed in a Ziploc baggie and placed it in my friend's freezer prior to my watch, and there I had it, a sheet of pea ice. I walked up to my room 60 minutes before inspection, knowing my ductard roommates wouldn't be up, and slid this sheet of pea ice under the door into the middle of the room. And you may ask why I didn't just open the door as it was my room? Because I didn't want to take the chance of waking one of them up during my covert operation. The inspectors came around and sure enough, oops, I forgot to wake up my roommates like I did everyone else on the floor. Amidst the melee of the inspector banging on the door, them trying to get dressed and them both very confused and shuffling through the pee, all hell broke loose. The inspector had those shitty ducks standing at attention, leaning over to smell the huge puddle, realizing it was pee in the middle of the floor. The face he made when he made that realization was something I will never forget. He lost it. Those 2 got in a ton of trouble, and since I was on watch they lifted all punishment on me, finally realizing it was them the whole time. I don't feel guilty at all. I never did, I never will. Next one is titled, "Negative Review Makes Bad Boss Go Nuts." So I worked for this guy who was a bit of a prick. He was late to my first day in the office, so I had to wait 30 minutes outside the front door. He then told me about how he closed his business down because his soon-to-be ex-wife wanted too much money, so he closed up his company and 50 people lost their job. He also left me for the afternoon by myself and didn't come back, so I had to call around the other boss to get the key to lock up. This was all on the first day. I knew the first day I had made a huge mistake. Anyway, about a week in he is ranting and raving about a bad Google review he got. Like a full-on tantrum. Got so worked up and had a few people to give him 5 stars on Google to right the injustice. Was upset for a day or so. I work for this guy for a couple of months. Always looking for other employment. It doesn't work out and I leave and go somewhere 10 times better, where I still am 3.5 years later. This is where the petty revenge comes in. I set up a Google review account and start placing normal 4/5 star reviews all around town, just randomly. 6 months later I do the same thing, and again another 6 months down the track. After a couple of years I'm a local guide. I give this guy a 1-star review and state how he wound up his last business, and also name it in the review so people can Google how the business went into liquidation, which is 100% true. A couple of days later a few more 5-star reviews come on to bump him to 4.1 overall rating. I know 80% of these come not from clients but people he knows or service providers he uses. It's great knowing he would have been super pissed. Might do it again in another 6 months. Next one is titled, "Oh, the Memories of Living with Lazy Housemates." I used to live in a shared house for university students. We all had our own rooms, and the kitchen, living room and other areas were shared. I loved it there and the house was really nice and spacious. In total, there were 7 of us. They were all incredibly lazy. The most problematic happened to be the landlord's son, who had been living there for the year prior. It was everyone's responsibility to keep the house clean. The landlord, housemate's father, would come weekly to clean up anything extra. Technically, it was the son's responsibility to keep the house managed, and I would hear his father tell him off for letting things get so dirty. The poor father would have to clean the disgusting bathrooms, do the dishes that had accumulated everywhere on the counter, sink and stove. There was no dishwasher, and you had to do it by hand, and put out the trash, etc. Seeing as nobody else would clean up after themselves, I would do my best to clean up and keep the kitchen area clean. I would do the dishes twice a day, and have to clean up everyone's trash and spills. It was gross, but I come from a very clean household, so it pissed me off. I mean, I found a pot of beans in the sink because some idiot thought letting it sit there overnight would magically clean it. Seeing as there were 7 of us, it was hard for one person to keep the kitchen clean. One morning, I got up early as usual and went to do dishes as I normally do. The son was in the room across from the kitchen and usually never got up until 2 p.m. How he did classes, I don't know. Knowing people were sleeping, I would be respectful and do the dishes as quietly as possible. But it wasn't quiet enough, and the son comes storming out of his room, slamming the door behind him, goes to the bathroom, slamming the door behind him, and then heads back to his room, and once again, slams the door. If looks could have killed, I would have died many times over. Now, I'm extremely sensitive to loud slamming doors and when people are mad at me, so it caused me a mental breakdown for the whole morning. After dehydrating myself, I came to the conclusion that my efforts to keep the place clean were not appreciated at all. So what did I do? I stopped cleaning up after them. I only cleaned up my messes and watched as dishes piled up, the counter could no longer be found, and the kitchen smell increased. It drove me nuts. I would hear the landlord tell his son off for not keeping things clean, and we were getting emails from the landlord about the mess and that we had to clean up after ourselves. Thankfully, I was out of there a couple weeks after. Something happened, and I dropped out and moved back home. When I came back after a week of being gone, the kitchen stunk. My mum could smell it from the entrance and was disgusted. I do wonder how things are going there now. Next one is titled, Mess with My Kid Land on Your Butt. This happened 20 years ago in 2001. My wife, daughter and I were attending my brother's wedding in the middle of July in northern NJ. We arrived a few days early so we could enjoy the typical NYC attractions. We were with a group of 10 to 12 family members and had just visited Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty and returned to the dock. As we go to exit, my daughter runs to exit the boat and got right in front of stroller lady, who proceeds to push the stroller into the rear of her ankle. Thinking it's an accident, I didn't think twice about it. Then it happens again, this time more forceful. My daughter turns, looks at the lady and keeps walking. Now I'm upset realizing she has done this on purpose. My wife and sister notice that I'm now getting visibly very angry without knowing why. Then stroller lady goes on to repeat her previous action. As I notice her intentions, I kick, soccer-style kick, her right foot behind her left leg. Stroller lady is on her butt. As I walk by, I ask my daughter if she is okay. Last one is titled, Bully Me and Made Me Soil Myself? I'll destroy you. This revenge wasn't my story, but my friend who doesn't have a Reddit account. Don't worry, he gave me his permission to share. Let's call my friend Chris. This happened years ago when both of us were still kids, maybe around 10 years old. Chris was notorious for being bullied by a single bully. Let's name him Kyle. Why? I have no idea. As for me, I was a victim too, but not as bad. Most things done to me I can just brush it off. Kyle and Chris are about the same age, but Kyle is much bigger and tougher. For some reason, Kyle is always extra rough on Chris. Apparently wedgie and locker shoving is too mild for Kyle to dish it on Chris. The things he does is far too rough, such as tearing Chris homeworks, sharp pencil throwing. It drew blood on numerous occasions, and one time, Kyle even cut a hole on Chris' backpack that when he lifted up to carry, stuff would fall everywhere. Chris tried to fight Kyle once in a while, but Kyle is just a weight level above. Think welterweight trying to fight heavyweight, the level of unfairness is huge. He brought it up to the teacher and even guidance counselor numerous times, but for some reason, they always see it as, boys will be boys, and brush it off as mild roughhousing. Chris' parents are timid folks and have zero backbone to show. For some reason, they can't bring it up on themselves to muster courage to defend their own son, no matter how much Chris begged and pleaded. One day, during class, Chris had the urge to do number 2, got permission to leave, and in the hallway, he happened to meet Kyle. Usual bullying happens, and when Kyle realizes why Chris is in the hallway, Kyle bullied Chris even more, stalling him, until Chris actually peed and soiled himself. Kyle ran to the end of the hallway, then pretended to just walk into the same hallway where Chris had the accident. Pretended to just realize what happened, he pointed and laughed, bringing attention to a bunch of teachers and students nearby. Lots of other students were laughing as well, calling Chris a bunch of names, causing him to have a breakdown in the middle of the hallway. That was the last straw that broke Chris' back. A couple weeks after the soil incident, we went on our school trip to a ranch. I forgot the name, but it was located somewhere in a dry and hot area. Surrounding the ranch were random bushes of cacti with various shapes of needles too. There are warning signs everywhere to stay in distance from the cacti. The thing that Kyle did not know about Chris, he loved watching WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. His parents, for some reason, allowed him to watch it, not pay-per-view, at such a young age. Chris and I played wrestle a couple times before, so I already know how much the show had influenced him. He did a couple moves from WWE that left me surprised, yet amused. Kyle, being an obnoxious bully, tried to scare a bunch of students by bringing them close to the cacti when the teachers weren't looking. One of the students actually got pricked on the shin and Kyle just laughed. Chris has had enough, ran towards Kyle Usain Bolt speed, and just dropkicked him straight on the chest. Chris knew pushing Kyle won't do a thing because of the difference in weight. Dropkick, however, not only surprised Kyle, but if performed correctly, will knock back anyone that lowers their guard. WWE taught Chris well. The moment Chris' feet made a connection to Kyle's chest, Kyle staggered, tripped, and fell straight into a bunch of cacti. Various needles, hair thin, short, long, thick, barbed, you name it, is now all over Kyle's body. What's worse is, since it's hot, Kyle was wearing only a tank top, shorts, and flip-flops. Absolutely zero defense against the cacti. Kyle screamed in agony while crying bloody murder. Chris, once realized what he had just done, quietly but swiftly marched himself to blend with the crowd, pretending to act surprised on what just happened. One of the teachers saw Kyle's situation and called for backup right away. A bunch of teachers came and they all had the same look of horror because they don't know what to do. They couldn't just release him until knowing the next step, because here's the damage. Kyle got a bunch of needles on his feet, so standing up isn't an option. His sandals got knocked off his feet when he fell. Most of the needles are on his back, so laying down isn't an option either. On his stomach? No can do as well. When Kyle fell on the cacti, a bunch of the small cacti flew into the air and landed on his front torso. Nowhere is safe. The faculty decided to pull the needles from his feet first while Kyle is still resting on the bed of cacti, still crying incoherently, and screamed once in a while when needles are pulled. It takes around 10 minutes while muttering, "How did this happen?" over and over. Surprisingly, no one ratted Chris out. Instead, they quietly talked over themselves and thanked Chris for his odd brand of revenge. After his feet are clean of needles, they pulled Kyle to stand on his feet. Another scream, another cry. One of the teacher went to us and proceeded to guide us himself while the rest of the faculty worked on Kyle's body. Sadly, we missed the 2 hours of screaming content from Kyle. After the tour had ended, we went back to our starting point and at last, we have met with Kyle and the rest of the faculty. They asked for Chris because Kyle told them that Chris did this to him. However, the students, including me, bonded together, and defended Chris tooth and nail. We all told the faculty that Chris had been with us the whole time and Kyle just tripped on his own because he wore flip-flops. Surprisingly, the faculty believed us and instead, reprimanded Kyle for wearing flip-flops to the ranch. Kyle left flabbergasted but still sobbing from the pain. His body looked like a murder scene, band-aid everywhere, random blood trickle here and there. It was an art. After that day, Chris brought a tiny hand-sized cactus plant to the school every single day. He said that his parents wanted him to learn about responsibility by taking care of the tiny plant. The faculty bought his story, but that's not the real reason why. He brought the cactus plant to warn Kyle that Chris was done with his bullying and not afraid to stand up to him again. Every time Kyle saw Chris with the cactus, he ran away. I guess Kyle now has developed some sort of PTSD against cacti. Thanks for listening.